I think definitely surrounding yourself with the right people. I think a lot of us are people pleasers sometimes, or even just people persons, and we just love being around people. But I've learned that you have to keep your circle small because you need to have people around you that are willing to tell you what you need to hear, not always what you want to. And so to
Yep.
me, that's the biggest thing because there's going to be down days that you don't feel up to it, but that group around you is what's going to pick you up.
Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, changemakers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled to bring you different thought leaders from around the world every week, and we have none other than one of our incredible TEPSA region leaders, Joshua Stewart. Joshua, thanks for being here. Tell everybody who you are.
All right. Well, thank you, Todd. I'm very excited. So, my name is Joshua Stewart. I'm currently an assistant principal at Robert F. Hunt Elementary at New Diana ISD.
I love it. So, Joshua, tell me, at some point in your career, you knew you wanted to step into leadership. Let's dive into that a little bit. Like, what were you doing before you moved into campus leadership, and what kind of was your signal that this might be for me?
So, I actually didn't want to leave the classroom. I know some people they have in mind like an end goal and a fast track, but for me, I really enjoyed that daily interaction with kids. I love the content. I was a social studies and history teacher for 10 years. And so I was called, and I don't know how else to say it. I think most people in education feel that calling because the job is too hard. I know a lot of us get paid a ton of money, but the job is too hard for just the money or anything else. And so I prayed that it would just be obvious. And I had people literally come up to me that had no idea this internal conversation was going on and
Uh-huh.
say, "Hey, I really think you need to get into admin." And so after about the third or fourth person, I knew, okay, I get it. Here I come.
So, I love that you say that I loved the classroom. I wasn't looking to leave the classroom. I think of my own journey with that as well. And so I've got to know, now that you've been in these leadership positions for just a minute, how do you stay not losing that love for the classroom?
Yeah, I think that's something that is a big challenge for administrators, and that's something we hear from teachers all the time. Well, they just don't remember what it was like in the classroom. And so I think pretty simply get in the classroom. And so that's being constantly visible, that's being in the hallways, that's getting in the classroom. I was challenged by a fellow administrator to get into every classroom every day. I was like, oh man, I don't know about that. But once I started trying to implement it, it made such a difference. The kids knew who I was. It wasn't weird or awkward to be in there. And so I think that has helped tremendously. I don't hit that goal every day, but it's a very worthy goal and one that's definitely worth the payout.
Now that you've been in this role, what do you think? What advice would you give to others who are new to their leadership role? What is something you've learned that you're like, oh yeah, be on the lookout for this, or keep this in your mind, or something like that?
Well, I think definitely surrounding yourself with the right people. I think a lot of us are people pleasers sometimes, or even just people persons, and we just love being around people. But I've learned that you have to keep your circle small because you need to have people around you that are willing to tell you what you need to hear, not always what you want to. And so to me,
Yep.
that's the biggest thing because there's going to be down days that you don't feel up to it, but that group around you is what's going to pick you up.
Well, I also know that you also have to balance your personal life with your professional life. And I'd love to know, I know everybody does it differently. Everybody defines the word balance differently. How do you manage making sure you're giving goodness to both sides?
Man, that's always a challenge, right? Because we do give to our jobs so much. Like I said, it's a calling. I think the big thing is prioritizing. when your priorities are in order, you feel that, and you can feel fulfilled when you're doing everything, and just understanding that there's ebbs and flows too. So I've got a young family. I've got a 13-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Don't do the math. You'll figure out some gaps in there. But it requires a lot of my time, and I love being a dad and a husband. And so I think when you put the things in order, you understand this job is more than a 24-hour a day job. You could spend all your time doing that and still have something left to do. And so just understanding, hey, it's okay. We'll pick it up tomorrow and we'll hit the ground running. I think to me, just prioritizing, it's a simple thing to do and talk about, but in practice, sometimes it becomes harder, and you can feel that disconnect when your priorities aren't straight.
Definitely. And so, I'd also love to know, you know, every episode we try to pick a topic and something we want to talk about, and something that our guest is top is part as and something that our guest is passionate about as well. And I know mentorship is something that is really important to you. Talk to me a little bit about why has is that such something that is really just heavy on your heart?
Yeah, I think mentorship, we've had people that have poured into us. And some of the lessons I've learned were from people that I try to imagine my younger self and what was I thinking, but that's not how they approached it. They poured into me, they were patient with me. And I think the other side of that too, Todd, is that we are the minority in elementary education, being men. And I've come to find out a lot of our students don't even know how to interact with men. And so to me, mentorship places an especially tough burden because I want them to have the best success in life. And that means pouring into them like I've been poured into, but also being an example. And so I've had the great privilege of getting to start a mentorship group while I was still in the classroom. Myself and some of my coworkers were able to build a group called Mentoring for Tomorrow. And as a group of boys, about 14 boys, all of them we saw leadership capacity. Some of them made knuckleheaded decisions, and we knew they needed that push. And then some of them were great. And so it was a really awesome time. And so I'm trying to continue that. Right now, we have a group called Eagle Ambassadors, which I'm a beneficiary of because it was already created before I came. But I get to pour in and try to build that leadership capacity. I think sometimes we don't challenge them enough, and sometimes we're the only light they have in their life is them coming to school. It is that safe place, it is that place to grow. And so it's something I'm very passionate about because other people have done it for me. And I never thought I'd be where I'm at now, but somebody else saw that in me and spoke that.
Well, and I love that you share this because we often talk about mentorship when it comes in our jobs. But the reality is, us as educators and as school and district leaders, we got to be mentoring the next generation that's coming up in more than just the educational side of things. And so I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into this and say, either the previous program you were a part of or the one you're a part of now, how do you even select students? I mean, if somebody's listening to this going, I love the idea of mentoring kids, where do I even pick like the ones that I pick? And did you find out that there was like too many of a big group? Like what the ideal size was for y'all?
Yeah, those are great questions. Some of those we had to learn through experience and messing up and trying again. In the classroom, I think it was easier to know the kid because you see them every day, so you see their tendencies. As an administrator, I trust my teachers. So we just did a simple Google Doc at the beginning of the year, asking them to select a boy and a girl from each grade level of people they thought that would represent our school well and who would benefit from being mentored. And so by doing that, by starting small, we're able to now reach a bigger group. So it does depend on the number of adults you have, right? Because you can be spread too thin and then be ineffective. I've found that probably about 5 kids per adult is about the max, is what I've found to be able to pour sufficiently into that group of kids. Because that's the last thing we want is to have a group that's a great idea, but then be ineffective. And so that might be different for different people, but to me, sufficiently pouring into them, being able to have those conversations at that time, we want every kid to connect to an adult. And so, like you said, that mentorship, we're also mentoring other adults. I think it's been a tough realization to realize I'm not the youngest person anymore, which that kind of sneaks up on you. All of a sudden you're seeing the next generation, as you mentioned, of teachers, and you can definitely see a generational difference now. And I think getting to pour into them, and hopefully my goal with anything that I start is that it's not dependent on me. Meaning, like if I get called to be somewhere else, or if I'm not available, that program's dead. I want to give other people, including other adults, a capacity to where this is something that continues, and maybe someday my name's not even attached to it, but that impact is still happening.
I love the two things that I really heard that resonated with me, and that was A, start small. Like sometimes we hear about these things and like, oh, I can do like these 30 or 40 kids that we want to invest in. It's like, and then it doesn't work the way you want it to. So I love the idea that you said if y'all just started with like 2 kids per grade level and then built it up. But the other thing I think you said that's really important is if you're the sole person in charge of the program and you were to leave and the program to die, that's an issue, especially if it's a great program. So I love that mindset of being in there going, okay, you know what? I love this. I love being a part of it. I love developing it, but this needs to survive past me. So I also need to be mentoring those adults so they can do that too. So I think those were great piece of advice. Now, in mentioning the mentorship of adults, I'd love to know your advice. If somebody's listening today going, well, I'm listening to Joshua and I'm thinking, I need a mentor, like much less my students. I need somebody to pour into me. And I know you've had that too. Where should people begin if they're looking for a mentor, looking for someone? What's the advice you have there?
Great question. I think my pastor talks about this, how if it's a ladder, we should be the middle rung, right? We should have people under us that we're mentoring and people above us that are mentoring us. And so it's always going upward. And so I think there's a lot of different ways. For me, being on TEPSA Talk, TEPSA has been incredible for me in that way too, because I did not expect anything. I was just told by my principal when I became an administrator, hey, we do this thing every summer. We go to the summer conference. It's great. But what I didn't realize was the depth of the people that are in there. It's not just people that are principals, but it's people that are leaders. And that's an important distinction too. Look for people that it's not just because of their position, but it's because of the way they exemplify that. And so I've been able to connect with people that are in the trenches doing what we do, that understand what we're going through, but they're also not content just existing, right? They want to make a lifelong impact. And so I think that's a great place to start with TEPSA because it really is a network. And I know I can grab my phone, reach out, text somebody, and they'll get back to me if I'm having a particular struggle or something like that. But I think also, I mean, within your school, right, you have to think you were not always an administrator. There are people there that can pour into you. And I think it's just knowing the core of who they are. To me, that's more important, right? What morals do they stand for and aligning those with them. And so I think the opportunities are out there, especially in an age where we live that we're so connected and we can listen to other people, be challenged by different thoughts. I think it's just an incredible time. And the internet can be a great thing, it can be a terrible thing, but it all depends on how you use it.
Well, I think that was such good advice of, if you're looking for mentorship, get out there and go to some of those in-person events. Go and find other leaders you can connect with, but also understand that the feedback from the people you spend every day with, when their views and morals and things align with yours, you want to be seeking that out too. So I love that you shared that. Well, Joshua, as we wrap this conversation up, I always like to ask, if there's one thing you hope that people hear from you today, what is your one thing you have for our listeners?
I think the big thing is that you're not alone, right? This position that we're in times and places for a reason, but you're not having to carry all that burden alone. And to me, that's so important, knowing that there's like-minded people, other people doing the same work you are and making a difference. Because I know we can get caught up in what legislation is passed, the negatives. If you get on social media, eventually you become social media famous for some decision you make. But just knowing that you can get up and do it one more day and you don't have to do it by yourself. And I think that's so encouraging to know that there's people all over making a big difference, and we're just part of that movement.
I love that so much. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for being a guest on our TEPSA Talk podcast. We hope everybody joins us next week for another all-new guest. Remember, you can check out all the past episodes on your favorite podcast location or on YouTube. Everybody, have a great week.